from Dayton to Yale. What was that journey?
Oh man. So, I grew up in a, lower middle income background. My parents always told me kind of the playbook was very simple. Save your money, get a good education.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do my odd jobs and stuff like that. I, would do landscaping. Then when I was finally old enough to actually work somewhere, I worked at a place called Skyline Chili. It's a Cincinnati chili. So if
I've
you've
heard
ever
about
heard of
it,
it,
yeah.
it's like the.
I've heard it's big in Cincinnati.
It's the big, and Dayton is about an hour away. So we're like Cincinnati's little brother.
Okay.
And so that was my first job. So I was doing that, but the real thing was get a good education.
Yeah.
So I just from an early age have been very competitive with myself, and just understood I just always listened to my parents in that way. And so just studied hard, went to Yale.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a dream school in that way. Wasn't able to actually go to Yale and visit it until I got in because I just couldn't afford to do the trips where you go to, you line them all up.
What are the 10 you want to do?
Yeah. I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
So it was like,
sight unseen. I'm going to Yale.
and then once I got in, right, I didn't apply to any of those types of places early decision.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's a lot of commitment right there.
Yeah.
I don't even know, So then it was a thing of just making sure, when I got there to kind of look at places, and I fell in love. I met like my best friends very early on. I met one of them at Admitted Students Weekend.
Oh, fantastic.
Yale has like a Harry Potter house type system, and we were both sorted into Gryffindor. And life was good.
Do you view yourself as a Gryffindor person? If you were to slot yourself in Harry Potter, would it also be Gryffindor?
I've done the tests. I've done Pottermore. I've also done the BuzzFeed one. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. I think Dumbledore has some of the hardest quotes in the world. And I also love quotes. I think they're a good, pithy way to live by things. I am definitely a combination of Gryffindor and Ravenclaw.
Okay.
I'm very nerdy. I love to learn.
Yeah.
I love to, if there's something new I can learn, I prefer to learn it myself.
Yes.
So I can understand something. That's the Ravenclaw in me. I think my leadership style is very quintessential Gryffindor-y. I played football growing up. It's played sports growing up. So there's a very kind of archetypal thinking of a Gryffindor of we're a team.
Yeah.
We win together as a team. We lose together as a team. Those things. But I got, the ambition of a Slytherin, I guess. They're not bad too.
Yeah.
And I think I have the warm, folksy Midwesterner vibe of a Hufflepuff.
You're a little bit of everything.
I'm a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but definitely mostly Ravenclaw and Gryffindor.
Yeah. When did entrepreneurship get on your radar? When most people think about Silicon Valley environment, when you look at some of those charts of where entrepreneurs are produced, obviously Harvard, MIT, Stanford all get mentioned. I think Yale has a underrated both entrepreneurial and venture ecosystem. Yeah. When did entrepreneurship get on your radar?
Yeah.
Was it at school? Was it after school?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this in two ways. When did I think it did? And then now that I look back at my life, do I realize that it did?
Yeah.
Where I'm from, I didn't know what a software engineer was. I didn't know what an investment banker was. I didn't know what a consultant was. When you come from Dayton, Ohio, you're the good jobs are doctors, lawyers, politicians.
100%.
That's it. And so my playbook growing up was pretty simple. Work really hard in school. You have an opportunity and a shot to give yourself an education to do whatever you want in life.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, the opportunity set of what was in life until I went to college was doctor, lawyer, politician.
Mm-hmm.
I get to Yale. I'm like, okay, well, I don't really know what I want to do. And people suggested check out finance.
Mm-hmm.
I interned at Goldman Sachs as a sophomore, which was actually pretty valuable for me. I got to do 2 summers. But at that point, Wealthfront, Betterment, Robinhood, Acorn, Stash, those businesses were starting to take off. So here's me sitting on a fixed income desk.
And is this 2010 timeframe?
Yeah. I was there 2013.
Yeah.
2013, 2014. So,
and then Robinhood and Coinbase actually get founded right around there
correct.
too. Yeah.
So be me. I'm sophomore. I'm sitting on this desk. I'm so proud of that.
I'm here.
I'm here. I'm all right, I got a good internship. I'm learning about this stuff. I think this investing stuff is interesting. Okay, maybe I'll be an econ major, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, I loved understanding how those concepts connected and how money moves and all those things. Then you're reading all this news every day, and you're in a point in time, people have to remember it's a low interest rate environment. Active management, we're getting their butt kicked.
Yep.
So active investing is just the idea of there's alpha to generate beyond just essentially putting your money in an ETF.
Yep.
And at that point in time, these companies like Robinhood, Wealthfront, Betterment, Acorn, Stash. We're saying beta investing is actually the way to do it.
Mhm.
It's saying we're going to create you a very simple asset allocated portfolio,
Mhm.
and that's going to essentially be all you need is the diversification.
Yep.
And that inspired me because I was like, oh my God, my parents who know, my parents saved everything in savings accounts.
Mhm.
And I remember I had that realization after my first summer at Goldman. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to help them with retirement stuff because they just don't have all of that right. And they're smart people, but it's not approachable. And that really inspired me. Like, man, these companies that are trying to solve this, they're not here in New York doing investment banking. They're these like Silicon Valley startups that are saying we can use our like mind power, willpower, brain power to build things that help average people. And that's what inspired me to get into tech. And so from then I started studying, CS. I didn't have enough time to get the major at that point. This is like now my junior year. I double majored in economics and political science. Yale doesn't have minors, but I just kept taking CS. So I had effectively what was enough to like, I could code, I could build apps, got a job at Dropbox after college, then Facebook, had to save up money before I could become a founder. Saved up my money, funded my first business. And that was how that got started.
You graduated when?
2016.
Okay.
I'll add though, the really most important thing on this journey is I thought my entrepreneurship journey started there, but it actually did not. The first entrepreneur in my life was my father. And my father was a builder, right? He recently passed away, so rest in peace.
Sorry for your loss.
Of course. And, I honor him every day because he's the guy who every time I do a new business, actually when I started Lava, it's the first person I told about it. So I'm on this journey with him right now. But, he was a builder from day one. And, he had a small little construction contracting business. So it's wonderful to be able to walk around Dayton and see little things that he's built.
Built that.
Exactly. And so shout out to David Jones. I love you so much. Rest in peace. And even though that wasn't technology, what it made me recognize, and to any founders who are listening to this, is like, there's many ways to be an entrepreneur. And there's many ways to take the leap to say, why not try? And I got to see a father who tried. And I got to see a father who took those steps and his brain was always thinking.
Let's talk about your first business. Then we'll talk more about Lava. But before we talk about your first business, when did you get the conviction moment? Because I think, obviously entrepreneurs have a habit of being entrepreneurs over their life. It's like you become it and then you're like, dude, I could never work for someone else ever again. But the hardest part, there's lots of people who want to be founders, and I find that the hardest part for people is always that first step. And for a lot of smart people who come from great backgrounds, they're so used to planning out, and if I do ABC, then XYZ will happen, and then XYZ I do ABC again, and that's just not the case with entrepreneurship. So talk about that first moment of kind of diving into your first business.
So the other thing I'll say is I love doing these because it's a time for me to get to talk to founders as well. I did not have money. I did not come from money. I was not connected in tech. As you mentioned earlier, Yale is not the biggest, frankly, tech hub on the East Coast. Harvard's much better, which hates me to say. It's a little bit more of a connected network.
Changing of the guard.
Just terrible. It's all right. We're coming up. Obviously MIT, et cetera. And for me, I've always been good at being able to say, I know where I want to be. And I'm disciplined enough to say, what is just one step? Most people don't understand that little steps are actually very big steps. Every single person that you think is great, it's just a bunch of little steps. And they're just very patient on that. So for me, entrepreneurship for me was like an iceberg. And it was an iceberg that actually didn't start very solidly. I was like, okay, I want to do my first idea, not my first company, was a personal financial assistant. Anybody who, if you're listening to this, personal financial assistants are what a lot of investors will call
tar pit
idea.
Mine was a AI-powered travel itinerary.
There we go.
App.
That's another one. They exist. It is okay. You're
gonna do it.
You're all the real ones. You're gonna try to figure it out. Come talk to me if you want to learn a couple of things. I'll give you some feedback. But anyway, so I wanted to do this idea. Be me. You're now sophomore going to junior year of Goldman. I still have the notebook to this day. I was just writing ideas on how to, what I didn't think like the Wealthfront and the Betterment of the world perfectly had right, how you could blend these things, the need for human touch. I had all of these ideas. I would just write them. I would write them every day and I just do research. I was in college. I didn't have I didn't know, I was learning how to code. I didn't know how to code yet. But that was my first step, is saying, I'm just genuinely interested in this. And I remember at that point in time, people were like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And then the next step was, I was like, I need to get into tech. I've always been a believer of the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. I had offers in banking, consulting, and tech. And I was like, I need to go to tech. And that is where, if I want to learn how to build things, I need to get to California and I need to get into tech. And that was the first step. And every single time I got a step done, I just asked myself, what's the next step? Right? When I wanted to make sure I had more fintech chops, I went to Facebook. And that was one of the major blessings in my life. Ginger Baker, who's the VP of payments now, took a bet on me to run, she'd been handed a bunch of teams, and she's like, I need somebody to run mobile financial services, which was Facebook's digital wallet for Latin America and Asia. And I got to be the person to run it at a very early age and, handle a team of a lot of engineers, a lot of moving parts. And I understood what it looked like to run something from the ground up. And then I became a founder, took that journey, saved all that money, started my personal financial assistant, and it flopped. I was using my money, I was using my time, and it didn't work. I felt like a fraud. I didn't know what to do. I was running out of time. I was about to move back to Dayton because I was running out of cash. And even in that moment, I asked myself, what's the next step to take? And I was like, I need to find a co-founder. And, I got introduced from another friend from Dropbox to my co-founder of Lendtable, and that's when that started. So the answer to your question is, it's just little steps.
Yes, it's gradual. How long did you work on the finance app?
8 months.
And when did you know it wasn't working? And what was that like emotionally?
I think this is actually one of the hard parts, is like, there's this balance of, it's very easy in the early days to give up too quickly.
Yes.
I think a lot of people have the idea that I'm going to find product market fit in a week. And that's not actually how it happens.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
True. It just doesn't happen. I mean, like, obviously we have a little bit right now of everyone's doing some fun stuff with some,
but
revenue numbers.
A week is crazy.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't happen that fast, right? Like, I know in founders, if you're hearing another company is now the fastest company to 100 million ARR, don't worry.
They might be annualizing their hourly revenue.
They might be annualizing their hourly revenue. Focus on finding fit and find to solve real problems. Just find real problems and have enough conversations that make you feel confident that you're solving a real problem. I think the big thing for me is actually there was a couple problems that were actually uncovered along the way. I recognized a lot of things around where people were hung up in the journey. One of the big things that actually led to building my first company, Lendtable, which Lendtable, all we did was we helped you get your full 401k match if you couldn't afford to get it on your own. So imagine you had a $5,000 match from your employer that you couldn't get because you needed to feed your kids. We would give you $5,000. Your employer would give you $5,000. We helped you earn $5,000. We'd take our money back. We'd take $1,000 of what we helped you earn. It's that simple. You just made $4,000, no money down. And we were the only business in the world that could get paid out of retirement accounts because, again, my background's in payments. So everything I do is payments related at the end of the day. But in that journey, right, there was a lot of things with the personal financial assistant that I could see. I would see at the end of the day, if someone likes your product or wants to use it, if they will pay for it. No one pays for it. And if you do get them to pay for it, it costs far too much for you to even find them. Once you accept that truth, you understand you don't have a strong enough value to buy. You're not solving a big enough pain. Right. But there were very clear things though on that journey. It was like, wait a minute, we're making this assistant that's giving you suggestions on what you should do. We kept getting blocked on the same step. Number 1, 3 months of savings. Number 2, if you have free money in the form of a 401k match, that is the next step everyone should do in their finance. Get your free money. Every single person we were trying to help was like, yeah, it sounds great. You got $5,000 for me?
I don't have it on me.
And then my co-founder was like, actually, as a matter of fact, we could do something like that. And I'm like, wait, what?
Wait, we can just give people money?
Exactly.
Where do we get the money from? Yeah, that's fascinating. I was having a conversation earlier today where I think people overweight downside risk in starting a company because they underweight the value of the experience and what you learn along the way. And obviously there is a tough personal emotional decision because there's uncertainty with respect to your paycheck. Like people go from making money to making no money, and that's a hard thing to do. Let's transition the conversation a little bit and talk a little bit more about Lava. I think very briefly, what is Lava?
Yeah. So in a very, very short, Lava enables companies to track their usage by LLM, by customer, and by pricing plan. By doing that, we solve a very core problem. Right now, most businesses are moving from needing to do seat-based pricing to some sort of hybrid pricing. The reason why is if you're building an AI company, you understand a very clear truth. Seat models are going to look very different because you're actually inherently building something that's automating the way the need for as many seats. That is a truth that everyone is understanding. And now there is a $1 trillion industry, which is called SaaS, that is trying to figure that out.
Mhm.
The problem is we're moving from seat-based pricing to what I'd call measurement-based pricing. Pay for the work that your AI service or agent is doing, paying for the outcomes, paying for these things. And one of the biggest things I always tell people is payments is fun for people who have, just love punishment, right? It's the plumbing.
Yeah.
Startups should not be doing the plumbing. We make it easy for them to focus on building their core product and not having to build out payment solutions. Because they're moving to measurement-based pricing, the existing solutions which say slap a fixed cost subscription on it just don't work.
Mhm.
Because we're moving from a world of high fixed cost startups and low variable cost startups to a world of high variable cost startups and low fixed cost startups.
Mhm.
We solve that problem at 2 points for founders. When you're building for the first time ever, we make it easy for you to access models and track them.
Mhm.
Usually that's the only thing you're thinking about when you first build a company is I need to access models and track them. What we do that's a little bit different than everybody else is we understand that not only that is important, but actually enabling you to then say, I understand how I want to price in the future, and I want to actually associate that with my tracking.
Mhm.
Once you understand and make that link, it then becomes very, very easy for you to then slap a price on it. So you get back to being as easy as don't make me think. The most important product principle is don't make me think.
Mhm.
When I'm working with the team, that's our job to do for startups.
Do you all also own billing? So if I'm a startup and I'm on top of Lava, do I use Lava as my billing engine as well?
Correct. You can build with us and charge on top of us.
Mhm.
So what we understand and the way we think of the world is the world used to be you just process. You decide a number and then you process it.
Mhm.
You decide $30 a month, you process it and you put a time window on it.
Mhm.
Now, what a startup that wants to do any type of AI pricing, or even any company really, we have companies that come to us and say, we're trying to figure out and fix our AI tiers, is you need to first measure. Then you got to configure a pricing that understands the measurement,
Mhm.
which is usually very three-dimensional. We're going from a two-dimensional world, amount and time window, to three dimensionals, type amount 1, type amount 2, do you want credits, do you not want credits, and then processing.
Mhm.
So the interesting work where founders right now are getting hung up is they're spending a lot of time in that middle layer.
Mhm.
They're having to figure out how to build these systems that can track credits, track cost, understand these things with relation to their data, understand it with relation to their LLMs. And what we understood is any good solution we think can handle all three. So to answer your question, we help you with measurement, where that makes it actually a little bit different than everyone else. We help you with pricing, and then we also help you, of course, with processing.
What's a good example of either an early user of Lava or an early customer of Lava? Like, what are these applications that are building on top
A
of it?
great example is an AI sales company, AI BDR company.
Mhm.
When I first, and this actually is a great lesson maybe for founders as well. If you shout into the void about, hey, is this a problem or not? Usually if it's a problem, somebody will come banging on your door and say, yeah, like actually I was trying to do this and like I need help with it.
Mhm.
And so I'm in a group called Maker. Shout out to Matt Carley. He runs one of the best communities.
What is Maker?
Maker is a founder community that is actually, if you think about if you've been through YC, I've been through YC before. One of the best parts is the dinners
Mhm.
because it allows you to be vulnerable, get to know your batch, all those things. Maker, the way I think about it, is extending that concept.
Yeah.
And it's extending it actually
Post-YC.
Post YC.
Mhm.
Right. You can be in YC, but Maker is just like-minded individuals who are building startups who recognize that every once in a while it's good to be able to just talk about what you're going through.
Mhm.
And so I shout out in the void of that group, and I got a good amount of reaching back out saying this is an issue.
Mhm.
And one of the people was very explicit that they were building an AI sales company, And one of the big problems they had was like Stripe couldn't do most of these things. And the reason why was they had, if you think about an AI sales agent, they need to be able to message you on LinkedIn. They need to be able to get your contact information. They need to be able to email you. They need to be able to follow up with you. They need to be able to schedule time with you. All of these different things are actions within a system that need to cost something.
Yes.
There's no way for Stripe to both handle that and also put that into a subscription and understand all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And what was curious to me is I always think of myself as a doctor, not a salesperson. It's like my belief is that the existing solutions should already be able to solve this. Why can they not? Like, can't you just do this? And the answer that came back very clearly was, yeah, there's tools to help me understand and measure my traffic. There are tools that help me process. There's nothing that helps me merge those two and say, okay, I need to understand traffic and how that relates into pricing configurations and then how that relates into processing and getting paid. And the existing solutions require so much heavy lifting. These early stage startups are now spending days and weeks building wallets and systems that, fine, you made the system, but then the problem is, what happens when the latest and greatest model comes out?
Yeah,
and
you got to redo it all
You got to
over again.
redo the whole thing. It doesn't flow through. And so that was very, very clear. And that was the aha moment. It's like, we can be the link that allows that system to flow very well. And that was actually a problem we solved for our first customer. It was like, there's all these actions. I'm switching them out all the time. There's back-end actions, which I want to use the cheapest models available. And then there's these thinking actions I want to use expensive ones for. Those are changing all the time. I have no way to connect that, reflect it immediately in my pricing, adjust my pricing so I keep my profit margins, and then process it out. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, great. I'm flying to California. I'm going to sit down with you, and I'm going to understand how we need to build this.
So the before and after, when someone's not using Lava to they are using Lava, like, who do you rip out? Who do you replace?
Yeah. So first of all, the before and the after for folks is just to understand the before, you're going to spend weeks doing this. The afters, you're going to spend hours or maybe a day or two doing this, right? Honestly, it's going to be hours. And the reason why is because of how we think of our product. Let me go back to the example I gave before. I think there's measurement, understanding and measuring what has happened, pricing configuration, reflecting that into a tier, subscription, whatever you want to call it, and then processing. That is how everyone has to do this now. And what we do is no one really handles that middle layer, right? We can also handle those other two layers. So in processing, there are many different payment processors out there. They're very, very good at processing either A, subscriptions that don't have any usage, or B, doing one-time payments. Then there's also this measurement layer where there's companies like, Open Router that, route between all your different traffic, things like that. And those are, great tools. But the problem is, like, they still don't help you with that middle layer. What we've built our system to inherently do is we understand, startup founders, what you're trying to do is you're trying to measure as a means to an end to understand how much you're going to actually make on profit and what your pricing should be. Because we understand that, we understand those things need to flow together. So you can then actually just use us for all of that and get that through. We also can play with everybody else, right? Like if someone's doing X
you make
or
it
Y,
modular.
Correct. So, it's modular, but the real magic moments, that's another thing. I'm a product guy at heart. I love magic moments. One of the biggest ahas our customers have is when they first use us for measurement and they recognize, wait, it's like a couple button clicks for me now to get paid. Like, that is magic. Especially when before us, you were banging your head against the wall.
Did that AI BDR customer go from a fixed subscription to an outcome-based pricing with you all, or no?
They had a bunch of different plans. They were measuring it all themselves. They were like essentially doing it all by hand. Like, oftentimes when I first started talking about this with investors, they were like, who are you competing against? Are you trying to compete against Stripe and Adyen and all those things? And I'm like, actually, no, we're really competing against, for the most part, people doing this themselves. So
you're like a developer tool and like an infrastructure platform. Generally, you touch payments, but like,
correct. We believe at the end of the day, what has changed in the world comes back to the same simple truth. We're moving from a seat-based world to a measurement-based world. The reason why is oftentimes you might only have one agent doing a lot of different things. That agent needs to measure what it's done for you and say, here's how much I've done in this scope of work.
Mhm.
Here's how much it costs.
Mhm.
Here's all the things I had to buy. Here's the compute I had to use, et cetera, et cetera. That is what we think about. Inherently, measurement is a part of payments now.
Mhm.
And specifically for services businesses,
Mhm.
right? AI commerce is a whole other thing.
Mhm.
And I call AI commerce, hey, agent, go buy me a shirt.
Yes.
That's a completely different thing. But in our space, inherently what used to be just a developer tool measurement is now becoming a first-class priority for if you want to also help someone get
Because
paid.
measurement is tied to your margin.
It's measurement-based payment.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It's like if you want to be able to continue to improve your margins and price the right way, you gotta understand and you gotta be able to reflect usage.
Is this a problem? There's the types of businesses that sell to net new cohorts and grow with them. Thinking about selling into YC as a general cohort. And then there are the types of businesses that sell into existing established companies.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone is paying attention to AI
Yeah.
these days. Are you leaning more toward the former or the latter as your ICP? Meaning,
Yeah.
who has more of this acute pain
Yeah.
today?
So you said the right word there, and founders always remember just the only truth is who has pain.
Yeah.
That's the only truth in this whole thing. It's not what you want. It's not what you like. It's just who actually has pain. And if you don't find anyone with pain,
No business.
then you don't have a business. It's that simple.
Yeah.
The pain right now is for whoever is having to become a payments engineer way too early. And who
Yeah.
is doing the plumbing? And the answer to that ends up leading you pretty simply. It's the startups who are building agents, the startups who are building AI services, the startups building AI workflows, the people who are saying, I used to be building a software business. I'm now still building a software business,
But it's a services outcome.
It's a services agentic outcome.
Yeah.
For those businesses, you are going to have this issue every single time. What we actually uncovered, though, is now businesses start to reach out to us and say, because again, the problem is still the problem. Like, for example, there's a large ads-based business where they're transitioning their ads creative tools. They're trying to transition those over to, how do we actually make those for, all these different creators and things like that. And, even those types of businesses, they're like, well, I'm doing essentially agentic pricing. And we're building these agents that do these workflows. I need to figure out how to make this system work, make this pricing system work. So we know that frankly, enterprises are going to have this problem too. Larger businesses are going to have this problem too. We can handle those too. But the people day in and day out who we are serving is if you are a founder, if you are a startup, if you are the founding engineer, if you're the CTO, if you're trying to figure out how much time do we want to dedicate to building and maintaining payments in this credits system that allows us to do these plans, and then we have to maintain it, and then it breaks, and then someone needs refunds. And do you refund it the processor or do you refund it the credits? We're here to help you with that.
Mhm.
And that's who we focus on. That is our ICP. Startups building AI services now.
How does this differ from existing usage-based billing platforms?
So great question. So there's a lot of really great companies that are helping with usage-based payment already.
Mhm.
AI companies have a very interesting and very specifically different type of usage-based need. A lot of the way it worked in the past is you would effectively say, hey, you tell me what to listen to, and I will but you have to do the work to tell me everything I need to listen to.
Mhm.
And then I'll listen to here and listen there, listen there, listen there, listen there, listen there, listen there, listen there. And then you tell me what you also want to price it on. And then I will spit out what this needs to cost.
Yeah.
So it's almost more like in some ways a consultant for you.
Mhm.
It's like a consultant saying, hey, what are all the things you need to track and listen to? And then do that. The way we see the world is actually, that's not how most startups think about things.
Yeah.
Right? Most startups just say, I'm doing this stuff. Can the tools that I'm doing it through tell me what I need to do?
Mhm.
Inform me of what I need to do and make it easy for me to do that.
Yeah.
So in that world, in that previous world where these companies that were built before kind of this, they thought about everything as just, and frankly, it's also because of who they were serving. They were serving these some of these large data warehouse companies,
Yeah.
and they were serving a lot of those where it's just a lot of intricate data. Some of it lives in sheets. Some of it lives in it's actually measuring compute. It's measuring a
Yeah.
bunch of different things. And so they're just doing listeners, right? And then they're using that to then inform some configuration of a plan. and that configuration of a plan does what it needs to do.
You're right.
The other kind of difference here is for us is we understand that there's really twofold to this. One is that's still too much work.
Yep.
Number one. And so how do we make that simpler for AI startups? Number two is there's still a bigger issue at play here, which is they're not necessarily opinionated on how AI is evolving from being right now merchant to human to then agent on behalf of merchant to human to then at some point agent on behalf of merchant, agent on behalf of human working together. That's going to require some system for those concepts to speak the same language, use the same currency, and say we've prepaid, and so this can be settled immediately.
Yeah.
And that does not exist right now. And that is the bigger observation that we have, which is why for us, we think it's very important in the way we do everything is not only do we help you solve your first order problem, which is how do you get paid now, we make sure every single one of our merchants, we understand how their credits and cost structures work together so that we see this actually as a larger network plan in the long run, which is that we think that there's going to be an open system where agents have some form of payments or credits that they use to do things on the AI internet. So in the same way.
Yeah, and you need to understand what is this credit worth for my business?
Correct.
If I'm going to accept it.
Exactly. And so they don't really have the legacy usage-based billing companies that they don't really like have an opinion on that. Right. Like that's not really their they're like, hey, we need to get enterprises that can, do how do we get these enterprises that are like struggling with like updating their frameworks?
Yeah, I view it as I'm just less familiar, but it's basically like out of my usage of this database, like what should I charge my customer? And I need to have like a continuous understanding of that.
Correct. And then it's like some of this lives in databases, some of this lives in APIs, and you're having to like share your keys with them or even actually just create custom endpoints with them. There's just all of these things you need to do in order to do it. Where we see it is it's like, hey, if you're building the app for the first time, you will have not even thought that you were setting up payments. Yeah. But by building your product, you set up your payments.
Yeah. And they're always going to be focused on solving the pain for their customers.
Correct.
Payments, measurement, tracking, usage, all of that's an afterthought.
And one of the things that we think is very important if you want to understand where AI is going, we have a sub-concept of, you pay through this idea of a wallet. It actually does not matter for customers at all. Like you don't even really need to think about it that way. Kind of similar to how like Nubank, Nubank is actually very much powered by like, for example, stable coins. But everything and most of the customers don't actually even recognize that like Nubank has like created this very elegant system between fiat and stables.
How much of their business is powered by stable coins?
I think a lot of it's their underlying rails. So it's like when they're moving money across countries, things like that is usually when they're doing money movements and things like that. That is where that's happening. So in terms of like how much of Nubank's business is that, I don't know. But I mean, Nubank is crushing it.
Nubank's huge.
They're absolutely crushing it. Bringing it back to what we think about is there needs to be at some point, we're in stage 1 of AI, which is right now, sometimes AI workflows are engaging with humans, right? AI workflows are going to become more autonomous. An agent, all that means is an autonomous AI workflow. And that autonomous AI workflow can be structured or unstructured, right? We're thinking if you're thinking in your head of like Jarvis from Iron Man, that is an unstructured AI workflow that's autonomous. We're not there yet. But even as we get there, it's going to still need to be able to understand how much things are costing, how much work it's doing, and have some form of credits or something or wallet or some capacity to be able to pay for the things that it needs to do.
Yeah, so, you could see a really interesting world where if you have a Jarvis-like product and you're a business, right? Like take procurement. You've got a Jarvis-like product for procurement. And on the other side, your suppliers also have some sort of agent workflow that can complete the work for you. You would imagine there's a world where it's the same thing that happens today. Your Jarvis is going to ask for a quote. And in order to win that business, the other agent on the other side, the supplier agent, is going to need to have some frame of reference of understanding of saying that quote's going to cost this amount. And in order for them to do that profitably for their business, they would need to have an understanding of, okay, like what has all of our prior history and usage and cost for our inference.
Correct.
What does that entail, and what should I price this customer at this point in time? You could get to really, and this is one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you is, how do you think about, I guess I'll just use the term of price discrimination in the age of AI. We were talking about this earlier before we hopped on, but different token usage, in my opinion, should have different costs. Today, everything's generally priced the same from an end user perspective.
Yeah. So there's two ways we feel about this, and this gets a little bit into that idea of one of the hard things that we do that's going to matter in stage 2 is making everyone's business models foundationally map back to some understanding of what their credits inherently internally cost, not what they're charging customers. Number one rule of business, this has been around for forever. Founders always remember this. For the most part, in most cases, the customer is always right. If the customer wants to price how they want to price, your job is to inform them as much as you can on how much could you make in this pricing, like what are the ways you could do this pricing, et cetera. You're pointing out, though, that a lot of businesses right now are not mapping the idea of, they're doing a lot of sins. So like they're mapping this idea of credits, but then credits mean something different if you go to a higher tier. The credits cost different things, right? Then some businesses are saying, okay, well, when you get to an overage state, the credit doesn't now cost $2, it costs $8. So there's all these different things people are doing in order to try to make their business models work, which is inherently interesting because they're not always attaching it to the underlying value of a token, right? And what we do, that is actually why the analogy, the way we think about it, is kind of similar to there needs to be some layer that foundationally understands what was used. And that is us. And so what we do is because we actually have all that visibility, internally we can understand things in terms of how much they actually cost, and then also reference and have a transformation layer that says, here's what you want to communicate to your customers.
Yeah, here's what it's going to cost you because you've pinged Anthropic and OpenAI and DeepMind, whatever it is. So here's your reference cost.
Correct.
You decide what you want. Do you want to charge 20% on top, 50% on top, 75% on top, whatever it is?
Here's where this gets very interesting. If you believe at some point there's going to be an AI agent, essentially economy of agents doing all these different things.
What do you believe?
I think there will be.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to take some time. The first lever of that then is they're doing work on everybody's behalf and they're doing all these things on everybody's behalf. You have to be able to do what? You need to be able to measure how much they're doing autonomously.
Yeah.
Right. And so what that means is then also you need to be able to measure how much things cost. And what that means inherently is subscriptions in a way actually block autonomy because they're such high price points. It almost always requires an agent to come back to the user and say, hey, are you sure you want to buy the $500 subscription? Whereas if an agent's able to say, I would need to do a purchase that's for 50 cents or an action that's for $1, it's going to be able to do that much easier.
Yep.
If you believe that, then that means that there needs to be some form of understanding of prepaid relationship payments. There also needs to be some sort of measurement of all of the things that are happening in that system and how many credits are moving.
As in, I prepay my agent
Correct.
to pre-authorize them to
And
make payments on my behalf.
The analogy here is saying, actually the internet. We all prepay to use the internet. And there's a standardizing layer called Verizon, AT&T, that tell you how much data or credits you have used. Data is a representation of gigabytes. Credits are a representation of dollars of compute. And so if you really look at where we're going in the long run, is as we get more autonomous, we need to understand no matter how people, how every merchant, how every website, they can talk about it in whatever language they want to. At the end of the day, YouTube can call a stream whatever they want. It fundamentally comes back to data and gigabytes. It's going to be a similar thing, in my opinion, with the agentic economy. It's going to all come back to dollars of credit, which is dollars of compute. And if you believe that, then we need to, whoever learns how to measure that across is going to be in a good space.
Yeah.
And so we think that the very important thing in the long run is actually, it all comes back to the same thing I've been saying over and over again. Step one is measure.
Do you think, let's say we have two startups.
Yep.
One startup is helping oncology doctors with parts of their workflow.
Yep.
So very high value, high stakes use cases because it's related to cancer.
Yep.
Another startup is helping, I don't know, bakers, right? Create copy for their new cakes.
Yeah.
They're both still,
Yep.
unless something changes in the world, still going to be routing their inference calls to one of the foundation models or
Correct.
through another third party that still routes to
Yeah.
those foundation models. Do you think those inference calls should be priced the same? Or are you saying, hey, we'll leave it up to those providers to figure out the pricing?
We'll leave it to the providers to figure out the pricing because there's an inherent cost of those things.
Yeah.
What we're doing is making sure that that cost is understood across whoever the provider is. The way to think about it is if you even go back, another good analogy is in payments. In-store credit in the form of like a card or thing you swipe. Like people tried that before like Visa and MasterCard. But what they did was they said everyone needs to be communicating and talking on the same thing. Most of the times, individual businesses are not inherently incentivized to make an interoperable system.
Right.
Right. So I don't think that the compute level players are inherently incentivized to make an interoperable system where it's easy for that to happen.
Yeah, because they want to drive lock-in to themselves.
Yeah. But what we also know is that in the internet, it was great that it got standardized, right? Thank God we're not on dial-up anymore where everyone was trying to figure out how am I going to monetize and how am I going to pay for this traffic and all of that. Another good example is I'm really glad cards work on card networks, right? Thank goodness that everyone's not doing their own system. You can now settle a transaction very, very quickly. When I was, running digital wallets at Facebook, the first thing I would do was I would go to the regulator in the Philippines or Peru, just because the whole thing was everyone was on the same page or when I was talking to the bank CEOs or, the startups, can we do interoperability, right? That is the key. And none of those groups are ever inherently incentivized to do it themselves, which is why there always ends up being someone who recognizes, wait a minute, the real pie here is if all agents are able to move and talk to each other. But then that's not a big issue just yet. What is a big issue right now is the people building them need to be able to measure this agent's usage and reflect it in their cost. And then when you have that aha moment, you're like, okay, there's stage one, which is help AI companies get paid.
Yeah, and even if the model providers price their compute usage differently, you're still giving everyone visibility into what your aggregate price is.
Correct.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like, I think it's pretty clear at this point, like there's a term people use which is called being model agnostic. It's pretty important. I think that became a bigger thing after the quote unquote deep seek moment.
Yeah.
Where like
it's gonna be way cheaper. Let's just use
they're
that.
Like Tony Stark built it from a cave with scraps. Like, wait, how did he do that? Right. And so then everyone's like, oh man, we need to switch that. But then it's like, do you need to then switch all of your API integrations, all your calls, all those things? No. Which means that inherently people feel a push to be model agnostic.
Yeah.
And by definition, what that means is then that means that there needs to be some understanding of these things across.
Yeah.
Right. That's how I think things are going to end up. Who knows? It could end up being a world where actually one player
I don't think
wins
we'll
everything. I don't think
anyone thinks that or anyone wants that. Another thing I want to talk to you about, because I think you have a unique vantage point relative to most people. The type of business you're building is a little bit of an index, right? Like in success, you would aggregate a lot of these companies that figure out a way to sell the work.
Yep.
I'd be curious to get your view in terms of, where are we in that transition?
Yeah.
A lot of capital is being invested behind vertical AI startups in every which industry you can name it, in manufacturing, in real estate, in legal, in financial services, in healthcare. And businesses are starting to work. But I'm curious about, from your view of being at the bottoms up version of seeing that growth, like what is your intuition in terms of where we are in that transition?
Let's just say if we broke it down into 4 stages, stage 1 being there's business use and you can make business models here. Stage 2 being like this is a clearly accepted as the way to do things. Stage 3 is businesses that were legacy are like truly waking up to like this is the way I need to transition my organization. To stage 4, it's like we're now into that future state of like fully agentic and business is just foundationally different. I'd say we're still in stage 1.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it very exciting.
Yeah.
Is there is founders, if you want to hop in, you're not too late. I know sometimes it can sound and feel
It
like
feels
you're so
late.
and like you're not, but to get back on, like there's always a feeling of, am I too late? Am I too late? And the answer is, if you're solving a real problem, you're never too late.
Yeah.
You just got to always be willing to just only focus on the problem. But I think we're in stage one. And the reason why is right now, I think about stages by kind of like sales. You can have a very good product that a lot of people will want to use, but you always got to sell to super users first.
Mhm.
The way it was taught to me was like the broken down bus. If you tried to sell Uber before you had all of the bells and whistles, and you just thought like, would people use it? You would have probably gotten the wrong signal. You would have said, most people don't want to use this. But if you had only went to people who had been working all day, standing on their feet, were super tired, were raining outside, and it was hard to get a cab, and you only focus on those people over and over and over again, would they use it? And the answer is they probably would.
Mhm.
They're willing to do things that are a little bit different than they
Mhm.
would have before. And right now, the people who are willing to do that, the power users or these like hardcore users, are startups.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the people who understand where we're going and how much more business can transform.
Mhm.
But I talk to some of my buddies and friends that are like, even in tech companies, the amount of AI they're using is still way lower than what it's happening in startups. Right? A lot of companies are like understanding the shift, and they're like, we're trying to understand and make sure, like someone said it to me, it's like,
well, it's hard. Habits have to change. And I'm a big believer that there's a last mile problem within AI. So depending on your job within a tech company, let's leave software engineers out of it, but let's say you are a controller or work in finance or work, to a certain extent on the sales team or a marketing team, like you don't have purpose-built systems, these systems of action for your role.
Correct.
Yet.
Yeah. And that's why I think there's like levels of these things. It's like actually the first thing is like the way I kind of described it is like at some point in everyone's job, you had to learn how to do email.
Mhm.
At some point in everyone's job, many people, you had to learn how to do Excel.
Mhm.
At some point in someone's job, you had to learn how to do PowerPoint. Like we're now at that point where for your job, you got to learn how to do these systems.
Right.
They will make you faster.
Yep.
That being said, there's actually another interesting problem, which is that most companies don't, A, have an ability to choose which tools are the ones that make the most sense for them, and B, are very worried about tool lock-in, right? Stuff is changing so much. It's like, do we buy subscriptions to X or Y or Z, which is actually another argument for actually things moving towards a more like fluid credit style model. But we'll save that for a bit later. But, the big observation is we're phase one, right? Like most companies are still, most people don't even know how they can get the most out of Claude or OpenAI.
Yeah.
Like there's so much you can get out of those tools, even before you move to like N8N or any of those things.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we're very early.
Yeah.
I think that, there's some things though, like some fields where you just feel it. Like engineering is a very different field now than where we were before.
Yeah, because people have 24/7, agents working in parallel to them.
Yeah, and honestly, the thing that we even see is it's actually the real value is the context.
Yeah,
you now have.
How do you guys use?
Yeah, actually one of the best ways we've found is we're more of a we use all of the different LLM providers.
Mm-hmm.
I have not enforced that like anybody has to use certain tools yet. Like you need to use Codex, you need to use Claude Code, et cetera, et cetera. The biggest thing that, actually is really interesting is one, assessing how good an engineer is has slightly changed, right? Like leak coding and things like that is, an LLM can do that and pretty quickly. I think it's now you have to, just number one, assess systems design. How good is someone understanding how systems should be built? And then number two, it's like, which is the interesting thing to see is, are there assignments and things you can give someone where actually you could only get it done with an LLM, but you can only get it done right with an LLM if you're a good engineer.
Yeah.
And so like that is actually I think it's going to be an interesting next step. Internally, one of the most powerful uses that what we do is number one, every time we're having a systems architecture, systems design discussion, we do it first without like tools.
Mm-hmm.
We record the whole thing. Then we actually run it through an LLM that also has all the context of how our product works.
That's wild.
That's how we do it.
It's so fun hearing how different companies, different startups are adopting these tools.
Yeah.
Because it's like you've got I oversimplify it and I'm like, you've literally got a genius that
Yeah.
will answer any question for you as long
Yeah.
as you provide it, him, her,
and you
with
have the
information.
literal OG. You have like, yo, this guy's been at the company since day one, so
Yeah.
he knows all the systems.
Yeah.
Like that is the thing. If you give it the right context, is what you have.
Yeah.
Now the problem still is like scoping, right? Like you still need to make sure you're kind of pointing it to which part of the context you want to reference, like which part is important for understanding this. There's all of those pieces.
Yeah.
But really what you have is like foundationally, like the core issue, and I remember this all the time, especially being at like Dropbox and Facebook, people leave, they go on. You're like you're handed systems and you're like, okay,
Like, I don't know anything
how
about
was this built?
Yeah.
And then we do this trying to get up to speed, and now you can understand the decisions.
Yeah.
They sit within your, like we use a company called Quill for
Yeah.
our meetings. It's a note taker for our meetings.
Okay.
So now we have these home bases where the context of how we got to the decision, why we made the decision exists. Also, it lives
Do you
in
feed
code.
all of that programmatically?
Yes.
Okay.
So that you just
So
push
you
it through.
almost have like to use the Jarvis example from earlier, you almost have a homegrown
Correct.
Jarvis like operating system.
Correct.
And one thing I do want to come back to, because I think it's like a piece of interesting tactical advice for building today. How do you tactically set up a engineering candidate eval
Yeah.
to push the candidates to see, oh, you can only solve this with an LLM,
Yeah.
but you still need to have good engineering and systems thinking in order to do that.
Yeah.
How do you tactically do that? Because I think
it's hard
I think that's a
right
great
now.
like filtering
Yeah.
mechanism.
It's still hard because really usually the way things work is major innovation happens and then we're all trying to catch up to figure out how to actually do that well.
Yeah.
The way I've done that is I just go to everyone I trust who I think is a very, very smart, very good engineer. And I'm like, help me understand something that if you just ask a model, it's going to screw it up. But help me understand something that you also can't also get done and that you could code within a 1 hour sitting without an LLM. And then I help try to understand that and relate it to our business. So for example, one of the things that we actually did, which was really interesting, was trying to understand, like going a layer deeper.
Mhm.
Like most of the times LLMs actually sit on like a top layer where they can understand things very well. But like, for example, when you get into like lower level coding or like lower level understanding of things. So for example, if we want to be able to measure real-time APIs, that's an
Mhm.
interesting problem, right? Like how do you build a system? And what I mean by that is imagine you're trying to track usage for somebody who's on a call, right? We have
Mhm.
like doctor scribe, medical scribe. A doctor medical scribe is on this phone call and all of that usage is being logged in the call. Do you turn the call off? Do you keep it going? What if there's overages? It's just hard, right?
Yeah.
There's just a bunch of this stuff that
yeah.
no one has had to think about before.
Yeah.
And
They've only paid for $10.
They've only
worth,
paid for
and it's
$10.
Keep going. You're like,
and it's like, who's footing that bill? Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
all of these
someone's
questions.
paying.
What's the protocol for that?
yeah.
So, but even then, using the real-time APIs, the other issue for an issue like that is latency,
Yeah.
right? I can't say, oh, 1 second, load the call. Like that's like milliseconds of latency on a call is very weird.
Yeah.
It's like it's the worst call you've ever had if there's like seconds of lag.
Yeah.
And like, so those are issues where it's like, okay, you have to foundationally understand the system's design of that first. You could ask an LLM how to do that, but then if you're trying to ask that and understand that within the framework of the type of company we're trying to build, like you can try to give it all of that context for how to solve that type of thing. But it just inherently requires creativity and it also inherently requires a lower level understanding of like
Yeah.
very important concepts that are engineering concepts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's like the thing right now. But even like doing that, what I did is I just went to like the smartest people I know, both at Lava and then like also outside. And I just like, that's the other thing.
It's
like,
understanding where the limit is
100%.
today. Yeah.
100%. And like the other thing, founders' big suggestion, and I wish I would have done this more with my first company, Lendtable. One of your superpowers is recognizing what you don't know and then just immediately saying, who's the expert?
Yeah.
Let me go find him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that is literally it. It's like, I
That's
don't know how to
also,
do it.
but another tactical founder building moment, but hard to do, easy to say
Yeah.
in practice, hard to do. Because
Yeah.
like, let's say in the abstract, you're building something hot right now. You're building in defense,
Yeah.
and you're like, hey, I want to build a defensive missile system, and I need
Yeah.
to find the one expert in this type of radar, like,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Again, it's one thing to say like, I want to go meet that person. Then you got to go figure out who they are.
Yeah.
You got to have enough context to validate, okay, this is actually the expert.
Yeah.
You know, it's work, whatever. You can figure that out, maybe a day or two.
Yeah.
But then to like go meet them and like get on their radar in time, like it's kind of like that's tough in my opinion.
What I've found, it is for sure. And that's the job of founders tough. And you know, the athlete brain in me is like, well, that's part of the job.
You figure it out.
You chose the job. You know what I mean? You know what I say? If
you wanted to be the boss.
Yeah, exactly. Pay the cost to be the boss, as my grandfather would say. And like, you know, with these types of things, right? The thing I will say is, along my founder journey, I have found that one of the reasons why being a founder is one of the best fraternities to ever be in is because people understand how hard it is, and they genuinely usually want to help you, whether or not they think they're going to make money on that.
Yes.
That was one of the things that drew me to entrepreneurship. Was, you know, there've been people who I've advised who have now done crazy, awesome things. There are people who advised me, and they're like, "Whoa, look what you've done," and like all that. Like, and it's a beautiful thing, right? It's like, it is a very much, entrepreneurship is an abundance mindset. And the reason why is that most people are going after these ideas of blue oceans, right? They're not going just after, of course, there's red oceans as well. And people, there's a concept of red oceans and blue oceans. Blue oceans are new things that are untapped markets that could be very, very big. Red oceans are very big legacy markets, need to get fixed. But there's inherently this idea of there's these both oceans. And because the set of blue oceans is, in theory, infinite, you know, there's this abundance mindset. I think that brings that, which is usually things like experts and things like that are very, very valuable. For example, I was at a dinner last night and someone was asking me about Lendtable, and they're like, dude, I've thought about this idea. And I'm like, oh man, if you ever want to talk about it, like I can tell you all of the intricacies, all of the things. I don't, you know what I mean? It's like, and that's the other thing, founders, you want to fix the problem.
Yeah, you want, whether it's you or somewhere else, you're like, great,
someone to fix the problem.
I totally get that. Okay, Mitchell, this was great. We went a little over, but I do want to end on a question that I love that is actually very related to the theme of basically giving back within the founder ecosystem. If you were speaking to a founder who's about to start their company today, what is the one thing you'd want them to know or be aware of as they're about to go through that journey?
Honestly, it's being a founder is a struggle, and you will be better for it. It is one of the most important things. It is a literal look in the mirror reflection of yourself every day. And there are a lot of hard moments, tons. And it's a reflection of how many times are you willing to get back up and tell yourself, kind of like we talked about originally, I truly believe I made a step today, and I'm proud of myself for that step. There has to be a mental belief of I'm proud of that step I made, and be able to look at yourself inward and be proud of the steps you're making. So founders, the most important thing I'll tell you is like, take small steps. From many small steps, you will get to the top of the ladder, but you have to be proud of those steps. That is greatness, right? Greatness is not, you know, when you get the press release and you make the splashy Apple style keynote video. That's not the greatness. The greatness is when no one else is thinking about what you're building except you, that every single day you wake up early, you start building, you go to sleep late, and then you wake up and you do the same thing again, whether or not anyone else thinks it's cool. That is greatness. And even if you feel like no one is watching right now, at the end of the day, the thing that matters is that you will struggle, but that struggle is going to make you a great founder.
Love it. Love it. We'll end on that. Mitchell, thanks for coming back.
Appreciate it, man.
Love it.
Love it.